Hello there! Welcome back to Charles Circle, and welcome back to Captain of Industry. Last time, we got our first train running. Trains were one of the headliners of Update 3, and today, I think we're going to aim for the headliners of Update 4, Amphibious Vehicles and Bridges. Let's get into it. Alright, we are not too far from the requisite technologies for amphibious vehicles and bridges, so let's queue them up. We're going to finish recycling first. I'd like to get this installed today. It's not the end of the world, but it's a little inefficient that we don't have it installed yet, in the sense that these same recipes are going already, no matter what, because we need the maintenance. And so not having the recyclables be generated in the meanwhile it's a little bit wasteful, or it certainly feels that way to me. So I'd like to get that installed today as well. Not the end of the world, but sooner is better than later. So while we're researching all of that, let's implement a couple other odds and ends. The other thing that we can do is improve our fertilizer setup out this way. We spent a good amount of time last episode optimizing our farming output here, and I think we can even take it a little bit further, because we now have the ability to do something with the ammonia out here that we are currently having to burn off. And by the way, that pollution is one of the things that's getting our health dipping a little bit low here. So let's talk about advanced fertilizers. So we mentioned last time that fertility is something that we can supplement. There's a natural drift towards the equilibrium, balancing the various fertility costs of our crops and the natural replenishment. But we can move that equilibrium back up higher and therefore improve the output of our crops for the same input cost by supplementing with fertilizer. And there are 3 types of fertilizer in the game. We set up organic fertilizer last time, and that gives you +1 fertility per unit of fertilizer. It's also capable of pushing fertility up to 100%, but not above it. Fertilizer 1, which is this one, is 2 units. 2 fertility units, rather, per unit of fertilizer provided. It's able to push things up to 120. And then finally, fertilizer 2 is 2.5 per unit and can get you all the way up to 140. So let's talk about the recipes for those items. So fertilizer 2 is our best one, but we can come back to fertilizer 1 first. Fertilizer 1 is the ammonia that we're talking about. We mix it with some oxygen in an air separator, the same building that we've been using to provide oxygen to our steel plant, and you make fertilizer. You can also take fertilizer organic and use it to stretch a little bit further your fertilizer 1 production. So remember that fertilizer organic is +1 fertility per unit, and fertilizer 1 is +2 fertility per unit. So this is actually equivalent to 15 units of organic fertilizer, which is exactly the difference here. So it's not the end of the world if you put this in separate than this. The only real difference is that this is capable of pushing above 100% in the form of fertilizer 1. So this is nice to have. If you have organic fertilizer, you might as well run it through here, but there's really no efficiency gain necessarily. You can take that fertilizer 1 and mix it with limestone and sulfur, which we still also produce in excess from our refinery, and make fertilizer 2. So this is the ideal end state, fertilizer 2, as long as we can provide everything else along the way, and we can. So we're gonna set it all up here. We definitely don't want to limit ourselves to only produce if we have the organic fertilizer recipe, so we're going to take this chemical plant. This is a new building for us, isn't it? We're going to use a lot of these in the future. They end up with a lot of different recipes. We are going to prioritize, if we have organic fertilizer, to use it, but we're still absolutely going to produce fertilizer 1 if we don't have it. So we'll set it up here. This is the same building, by the way, that I mentioned offhand a few episodes ago now, that you can actually create synthetic ammonia if you'd like. And you have the spare nitrogen, comes from the same building as the oxygen in the air separator. And you gotta have hydrogen, of course, as well. We're not here yet, but I have used this before and it is handy in a pinch. And then we will be making paper when we are ready for the next level of research labs. So we'll come back to that, but that's also in this building. Very versatile building, the chemical plant. from here, we got to do something with that fertilizer 1, right? This step happens in a mixer. We're very familiar with mixers. So it'd be something like that, using the, I guess, probably oriented something like this, using the liquid input here. And we'll have to bring in the nitrogen, or the ammonia, rather, excuse me. Just to be clear, this makes sense to do on site rather than at the refinery based on the way that we have our base currently set up. I'd rather bring 12 ammonia here. We don't have to transport oxygen, we just put the air separator on site, right? So I'd rather transport the 12 ammonia than the 45 or 30 fertilizer, let alone the actual organic fertilizer. So just to be explicit about it, makes sense to do here, I think. So, of course, that means we will have to bring in that ammonia. We use a big storage, not because we go through it a lot, but because this means we have more of it around the base and we're burning off less. So we'll say, keep full, please, and thanks. We'll probably divert this pipe in here. We'll need, as we mentioned, an air separator in here somewhere. And we'll need to bring in both sulfur and limestone. So something like that, I'm sure. So I'm gonna take a moment here in a time lapse to arrange all these fellas and put ourselves a little bit of a storage buffer here, I'm sure. And we'll get it all set up. All right, I think this will work. Let's go ahead and let our trucks get after it. So, as you mentioned, our 3 inputs here. Fertilizer is optional, the organic fertilizer, but we'll simply bring it around like so. And of course we have to supply the oxygen. This will run at 50% at best. So we do need to vent the remaining nitrogen, but it won't be very much. We bring in the ammonia, as we said, and in fact I'm going to instant build that so that we can, as quickly as possible, stop burning the ammonia that we are currently making over at the refinery. This won't be enough to run 100% of the time, by the way, because 12 ammonia, I believe we make 9 at best in a fully functioning sour water stripper. Yeah, and this doesn't need to run at 100% because our entire refinery doesn't run at 100%. So we won't make all of this, but that's okay. Anything is better than nothing, which is what we're currently making, more or less. So this then spits out its fertilizer 1 output into the mixer. The mixer is only capable of processing 30 per minute. So in the, eventuality that one day we are producing the full 45, as we said, we don't have the ammonia to do that quite yet. This will not run at 100% even if this is, but that's fine. We don't really care about perfect balance right now. It's just use up all of our leftover materials. Limestone we have in excess from our mine, and sulfur should come on in soon. So we're not in a rush. We'll let our trucks build this as they have the chance to. I've also, because our vehicles are extremely busy, by the way, come in here and changed the construction priority. I really hate when I set up a big build, and I think it's by default on 8, which is higher than the default for servicing buildings, which is 9. So it'll prioritize construction above just like keeping the base running by default. And I'd actually rather have that inverted, personally. So I've dropped these down. And the other thing that I did actually a few episodes ago, I realized that I don't think I said this out loud, pardon me if I did, but by default, the game will allow partially loaded trucks, meaning that you can go get, 15 instead of the full 20 and deliver it somewhere on the map. This is super important to allow initially because you just don't have that much stuff. But right now we're about to upgrade to trucks that have triple the capacity, and we cannot have partially loaded only 20 trucks as a result. It means you'd rather wait a beat to need a full load rather than running a half load. So I unchecked this a little while ago, and I suggest the same by this point in the game for sure. All right, so while that's going, speaking of trucks, I think it is time to take advantage of the other vehicle upgrade that we got last episode. We focused on trains, and we're going to keep making trains for sure, but I think we're going to add, let's say, 10 trucks to start. You can also simply upgrade your existing ones by going into the vehicle upgrader in the vehicle management menu. And I do suggest doing that eventually, because it's not just about adding capacity. We're not at the vehicle cap yet, so we can, right, just add capacity in total by adding more trucks, but it's also about efficiency. So we said last time, one of these trucks basically does the work of 3 pickups, right? But it still only requires 1 driver. It takes twice the maintenance, 3.4 instead of 1.7. It takes just less than 3 times the fuel, and it does less than 3 times the pollution. So it's an efficiency upgrade in addition to being a capacity upgrade. So we'll definitely get to upgrading these eventually, all of our existing pickups into trucks, but just given that we're hurting right now, we're going to prioritize adding capacity rather than upgrading existing capacity. Hey, new settlement. Very good. We've been continuing to bop around here on the map. I don't know if we've done all the battles, but we've done all the battles we could see. We're coming up pretty close to the end of what we can reach with our current ship technology, so that's explorable. I'm not sure that these are. So, good update there. And actually, I should call out, if there's one thing that we found that we are going to use, this coal mine will be a helpful thing to have access to when our initial coal mine runs out. We are doing just fine right now, not hurting at all, but this is the sort of thing that accelerates, and you can get caught off guard on a coal mine transition, especially if you've gone hard into coal power, and the world coal mine is a really helpful thing to have access to keep you afloat. The other thing we're going to do real quick here is increase our steel factory capacity. So these guys, last I checked, and it's still very much true, have all been running at 100% for quite some time. It's great that this is running with perfect efficiency. It's not great that that is still not keeping up with our base's steel demand. So I'll hop into a quick time lapse here and do more of what you've seen me do before, which is simply copy paste. We're going to increase here by 50% because I think that's what our belt is currently limiting us to. These are 200 belts. These are 30 iron ore per. So 6 of these fellas is 180. A 7th would be 210, pushing us up over what 1 belt can do. So I'll hop in and take care of this real quick. And you know what? Rather than just playing pipe hunt, I'm going to make sure that everything that's currently on a level 1 in the entire build just goes to a level 2. Same thing with conveyor belts and pipes. And let's do flat conveyors as well. Everything else can stay, but the mass upgrade tool is a helpful one. You can click and drag with I, and we will simply, in fact, instantly deliver all of that, I suppose. So let's let our construction network get after all the other pieces here. I think we connected everything. We're all going to find out, though. I'm sure I missed something. I typically miss something. Let's see. But this should hopefully be helpful as well. We particularly are going to need more steel for bridges. Bridges take a ton of both steel and concrete. Fortunately, we're doing all right on concrete, even though I keep trying to spend it on roads. We are unable to spend it all at top speed, so that's all right. We'll keep working on it, but we'll be happy to have the excess once we are ready for a bridge. Hey, it looks like we have our first larger trucks. There they are. They don't look 3 times as large, do they? Maybe they do. Certainly they have 3 times the carrying capacity, which is lovely. Very good. All right, so we have recycling as well, which is great. So let's get that in place. So recycling gives us access to other things, the waste sorter plant. This is a big building. It's also an important and valuable one. So let's slap it down and talk about what it does. So it can accept recyclables or compressed recyclables. This is just recyclables but put into a compressor that will make it smaller and easier to transport. But it can accept either of these, and then it'll sort out and spit out the various bits of recycling. This is a composition that is predetermined based on what went into the thing that produced the recyclables. So for example, here, our lab equipment will spit out recyclables through the research lab. That's what this dashed box means. It means optionally it will produce recyclables if it can. And you can see that we're filling up here. Same thing is true over here in maintenance when we select that recipe and in fact prioritize it. Although we do want to make sure that it's able to, there's no dash box here, we want to make sure that it's able to continue to produce the maintenance we need if the recyclables ever do get jammed up. So those recyclables, as I just said, are a function of the input ingredients. And the input ingredients for lab equipment are mostly made of mechanical parts and electronics. Mechanical parts are made from steel and electronics are made from copper. And so we'll get a little bit of, when we sort those recyclables, iron scrap and copper scrap. Kind of a neat system like that. We'll eventually also get broken glass for the next level up labs. Includes a little bit of glass in those lab equipment pieces. You can get gold and aluminum much further down the line, but you got to run it all through this building. And it's an expensive building. Look at this, 360 construction parts 3. Quite a bit. It also takes 32 workers, so we're gonna have to do something about that, and a manageable amount of everything else, certainly for what it consumes, or rather what it produces for us. You'll also see that we start with a baseline of 20% efficiency. So for every 5 bits of iron that go into the recyclable collectively passing through the system, we'll get 1 iron scrap out. You can improve that. There are already a couple edicts. Nope, not yet. Never mind. There are not already a couple edicts. There are eventually a couple edicts that give us recycling efficiency, among other sources. So what it'll do is spit out on a sushi belt by default here everything that we are making scrap-wise. So we'll want to sort that out and then put it into storages that we can then run over to our baseline manufacturing facilities, which, as we have the entire time, prioritize the use of iron scrap. We can set up a storage here and then a balancer to prioritize them. We can also just continue to drop them off manually. That's totally fine. I do that a lot, frankly. But eventually, with high enough volumes, we might want to set that up. For now, we're okay. And the last thought I had, it sometimes makes sense to set up a bunch of smelters here, right next to the recycling plant. And we may very well end up doing that in the longer run. In this base, based on how we have everything set up, I don't think it's quite worth that yet. It's not super high volumes, but we'll probably move to a setup where we do some version of the sort of re-smelting on site. For now, I think we're gonna leave it be. So I will go ahead and get all these lines set up and the storages for export set up and come back to you in a moment. All right, so I think we're gonna do it like this. I have this second copy here so that I made sure that it would work if we do expand and end up making a second one. The first one that we make has a throughput of 144. That's gonna be fine for some time. 6 plus 6 plus 18. We're gonna be okay. But in the longer run, we'll also be able to mirror it, doubling capacity, and send it all the way around. Not a building you can boost. But on the output side, after collecting everything here into this input, on the output side, we will first peel off all of our iron scrap that comes out, and then second, all of our copper scrap. And then from here, it'll just go out to our different factories where it'll be produced or used to produce more of the basic goods. So let's go ahead and let our trucks get after all of this as well. Still room to come in here and use this ore sorter, which is important. But other than that, I think we are in a good spot with all of this. Hopefully. Let's see. So that's implemented. The one other thing that we get for the recycling technology is biomass collection. And this actually happens over here at the settlement. So what we do is some fraction of trash then turns into biomass. So normally we're producing, well, I don't know, let's look at the statistics. We're currently producing something like 30-ish trash per minute. This will now turn into, and I don't know the exact ratio, but say, for example, 25 trash and 5 biomass, right? So this will reduce our trash production by some fraction that turns into biomass. Essentially, you can understand this as we are already making the biomass, we just aren't composting it, we're throwing it in the normal trash. So we'll come back and look at what that ratio looks like later. But what do we do with biomass, right? Well, you might remember from last time that it's one of the things that we can turn into compost. In fact, we would accept its drop-off out here. The other thing we can do with compost, or rather with biomass rather than composting it, is accept it in a boiler in lieu of coal. Same thing's true, by the way, with animal feed, along with wood chips, which is just wood thrown through a shredder. These are pretty decent alternatives to coal, by the way. We're not going to use wood chips right now, but wood chips in particular is a really great renewable source of power. You set up forestry, as we have over in the distance, and you just chip it. It's pretty good. Works rather well. What I like to do, though, is anytime we have waste that we aren't using somewhere else, just come over here and throw it into the boiler manually. No need to set up a whole bunch of storages about it. Drop it in manually, and that's some coal burning avoidance. It's a pretty nice little bit of savings. And yeah, looks like we just need a little bit of time here to build everything that I've just asked our base to do. Time and perhaps some more workers. So by the time that's all caught up, I think we might be ready for amphibious vehicles and maybe even bridges. Let's see. But I'll come back to you either when that's all ready to go or when we have another update. Talk soon. So fertilizer's doing all right. The sulfur supply is a little hit or miss, but it seems to be enough to absorb at least most of the fertilizer one that we are producing, and this should smooth out over time. More of it's trickling in. Good to see. As you can see here, we're already all the way up to 140 and we're storing more. It's a manifold, so I'm willing to bet, yeah, well, even if we do boost that target up, I doubt we'll get to 140 on all 3 of them. I would love to be wrong. That would be great. But let's see how it goes. But obviously this is very helpful. We are gonna, I think, pretty significantly increase our crop productivity. We'd been hovering at like 70-ish, and if this does hold across all 3 farms, we're gonna double our crop output. So fingers crossed. We are also very nearly done with our waste sorting plant, and I think we even have the workers for it. I use my favorite nifty little trick when I'm low on pops and just temporarily unloaded the ship crew. It's not really a solution, it's just a band-aid, but we'll take it. I have also temporarily cranked up the pop growth edict and the health edict because health also increases your growth rate. Doing that, the beacon and every pop I can adopt off the map, we're going up as fast as we can. So this should hopefully sort out soon, and the steel factory is also all built, although it's not quite working at top speed because, of all things, we picked an awkward moment to have to rework our layout here at our iron mine. But we are back into the iron vein, and it should catch up here shortly. So all good. I'll be back in a moment when we are ready to do amphibious vehicles and bridges. Recycling plant is up and running. We will save a whole bunch of ore this way, and actually some coal too. Saves you on ore, half the coal, no slag, less exhaust. Good stuff. So as far as we can go in that direction, we will go. Fertilizer keeps working pretty well. We are not at 140 on all 3 farms, but closer than I maybe thought we would be. And as the sulfur continues to creep in here, maybe we'll get even closer. Very nearly ready here. All right, so we have the amphibious vehicles tech, and I even went through and got bridges too. Partly because I was trying to run some steel up. We are still hurting a little bit, recovering. We're producing at 100% again, but I do have to take myself out of a bit of a lone hole there. So figured I'd let it run for a minute, but we can start to talk about and build even some vehicles and bridges. So last thing I'll mention, I did, in order to fix our steel production, upgrade all of our small excavators currently mining iron and all of their supporting trucks to the tier 2 vehicles. And that has meant that we're keeping up, certainly, over here. It's also meant that we were spending a bunch of steel in order to do that. So as that wraps up, it's time to build our first amphibious trucks. These things are kind of cool. So let's build 5 to start. These guys can operate on both land and water, right? So it's not just that they can do water stuff, although they will prioritize doing tasks that can only be done on water. But in a pinch, they can help out our truck network around the base too. Why would you not just always have a full fleet of these? Well, they're a little bit more expensive to run than a truck is. Now it can hold 80, which is not bad, right? But it's nearly twice the maintenance. It's not twice the capacity. It's nearly twice the maintenance. It's nearly twice the fuel. It's about 50% more on the pollution. So, you know, it's possible to just have your fleet be amphibious trucks. It's probably not optimal. There's also an amphibious excavator, somewhere in the middle, I guess, on throughput compared to these other ones. Definitely a tall guy, height of 7 required to navigate around. This is one of those reasons that I tend to build these ramps instead of just running pipes up over roadways. Of course, he'll mostly be on water, but that's the concept. So we'll probably need to make a couple of these guys, but right away we're going to start with the trucks, because the trucks are going to be necessary to build the bridge, which I think is going to be right here. Cleared the trees already. I'm looking at going over to this island because, I don't know, it's close, if nothing else. There's good stuff over here. Sand certainly is going to be something we're going to have to bring in from the outside eventually. There's a whole bunch of farmland and water, and then limestone, copper, and maybe most importantly, coal. It's a pretty good coal deposit. I think that's something it's something we're definitely going to run out of eventually. But honestly, I kind of just want to get over to this island. I don't know that there's a perfect, brilliant strategic rationale for it compared to, say, I don't know, going over here. You know, we don't really have to push off our island right now. We are still self-sustaining, but we kind of want to. Same logic as trains. We can afford to check this out now, so why wouldn't we? So, a couple things to maybe get us in motion. Amphibious vehicles need, perhaps intuitively, a ramp to get down into the water. They can't just hop in and out, so we're gonna need to create one. Probably here feels like the right spot. Let's say go to here and then flip to a descending dump, and we'll just go right down here to water level. And hopefully we'll get folks to prioritize that. And in fact, I'm gonna temporarily, we'll come back to that I'm sure, clear that out. Do want to prioritize the dirt still in this area. I'm not gonna worry about making this a pretty dirt ramp. We'll probably pave it until it gets down into the water. But we need a boat entry, exit. What do you call that? Someone who's better at marinas than me, post in the comments. What do you call the ramp that goes in and out of the water? Anyway, we'll need that before we can get our boats or our amphibious vehicles into the water. But we need them for bridges specifically because when we build a bridge, it's going to happen in chunks, and there are going to be chunks that exist only over the water. And you can't drive out onto the completed part of the bridge to drop off the materials for the others. So yeah, we got to do it this way. So let's sketch out the bridge itself. We'll do it in planning mode, but a couple thoughts about bridges first. So there's two types. There's the truss bridge, which is a smaller bridge that goes something like this. Kind of cute. Red, small. Something to keep in mind with this one, as you can see with the 40 here. This bridge is, I guess, it's got two limitations. The first is how tall its pillars can be. So the difference between this one and the cable-stayed bridge, which just sketch that one out here too, right? For the sake of completeness. Come on over. This one, in addition to being taller and a little bit grander, let's say, it can have pillars that go down 100. So don't be confused by this. This 40 is not above the water. And if you think, for example, that you are able to, because this is a plus 20 elevation, right? It's actually measured not to the water, but to the seabed. So when you're crossing a channel like this, it's actually all the way down here. And if you can read my cursor, it actually says minus 20. So going from plus 20 at the top down to minus 20 at the bottom, that's exactly 40. We actually cannot bring this up another height level. The cable stay bridge, though, can go 100, and that's pretty much gonna cover you for anything that I can imagine on the map. I'm sure there's a situation where it wouldn't, but that's a pretty wild situation. The other difference between these two, the limitation on the truss bridge is 2 lanes. What do lanes mean? Well, you can make a lane a train or a road path. This is sort of awkward on the 2-lane bridge. You only really have the option to make it a road if you take both lanes. So, for example, this occupies the entire bridge throughput. If you go and say, oh, well, I just want train track on one side and then road on the other, too bad. You have to have 2 lanes for bidirectional travel, and there's no one-way bridge, apparently. So it's sort of odd. You either have 2 tracks, 1 track, or a road. So you kind of have bidirectional rail required anyway, right? Like if you want to have trains going back and forth, you need 2 lanes, one going one way, one going the other. I don't really know why it's different for roads, but that's how it works. On the cable stayed bridge, though, you can actually mix and match. So you could say, all right, well, on the right side, we're doing roads, and on the left side, we're doing trains. So if you want to have both, you need the big bridge. With all that in mind, I think we're going to go with the big bridge. The big difference between it is the cost. And it actually costs, as far as I can tell, the same amount of steel, 3.7K, 3.6K. It's slightly shorter as we've drawn it. It's basically the same steel cost, but 3.5K concrete is very different than 6K concrete. So the big fella takes more concrete. I think it's kind of worth it. The way that I think about this is anything that spans island to island on this map, for example, we're probably going to use the big bridge for. And anything that's like moving around within the same island, which we are actually going to do a little bit of, I think, is sort of the smaller truss bridges sort of archetype or sweet spot. So I think we're just going to draw a bridge, the big fella, that spans here at the most narrow point, just to get us over to the other island as a starting point. Last thing I'll mention as we're doing this, I'm holding shift, by the way, to make sure that it stays straight. It can get a little unruly otherwise. As we are placing this, you see these red and green icons? Green looks like the cargo ship, red looks like the battleship. What that icon, I believe, is trying to tell us is it's not enough clearance for the battleship, but it is for the cargo ship. Let's come back to that in a moment. I think there's something funky going on there. So if we go to each of these, cargo ship over here tells you it needs a clearance of 9, right? And we just said earlier that this is the plus 20. And of course, water, right? Water level is 0. That's what we're all anchoring to. So plus 20 down to 0. We should have 20, or maybe it's 19 if you have to count the actual depth of the bridge itself, I suppose. The warship over here has a height requirement of 18. And it's telling us that that's not going to work. So if this is level 20, and it comes down like it should be, looks visually like it's dropping 2 levels to maybe to 18. And in my testing, in a sandbox mode, this is enough clearance for the warship. We're going to find out if that ends up being true here too. But like I said, it was in testing despite having the weird warning there. I don't know what's going on. Let me know if that happens in your setup as well. Not sure what to make of it in the meanwhile. But we are going to let our trucks get working on this then. We will be able to deliver everything over here, but not out, for example, to this segment because we don't have our amphibious vehicles in the water yet. We're starting to work on the ramp, which is good news. And then they will be able to get down into the water. He's here. Look at him. He's working on stuff. He's able to, and we got the rest in the queue. So I believe by default, so it basically, by default, you filter it and it says you cannot do anything that isn't on water. So what we can probably do, I believe, is come over maybe here. Yeah. So brilliant. So I think we play around with this. When enabled, amphibious trucks can still take construction jobs that regular trucks can't reach over water. They may attempt jobs that are unreachable for other reasons. So we can mess around with these settings. I think in the longer run, you kind of want them to be focused on the water stuff, but hey, in a pinch, yeah, we could use a little bit more throughput. We'll probably do that from time to time. All right, well, this is going to take a little bit of time here, but we are just going to slowly but surely chip away at this. Longer run, I think we'll put the rail on here, but let's just say road for now to start. We don't really need to run rail quite yet, but we are leaving space for it. I like this placement though. Seems like a cool spot. I don't think it's an accident, by the way, that these are conveniently exactly the same height. I think that this was sort of a, if I had to guess, this is the map designer had this in mind as a good spot to build one of your first bridges. So why not lean into it? Anyway, I'll come back to you when we have some other updates. Just glancing quickly, the farm stuff is definitely working. We definitely have more and more crops, and we are pretty close to the full 140. So nice to see that as well. All right, back in a moment. So yeah, I was playing around with this. I removed the amphibious trucks from the banned storage and deliveries list, and I gotta say, they really helped our truck network. They're decently sized fellas, you know, they do 80, which is more than even our new upgraded trucks do. They do 60. So they're really helpful at moving around all these like loose, good disposal stuff. So all the slag we have to dump, all of the rock we pull out of mines, same with dirt rather. It's been actually quite helpful. And so they're being sort of mega vehicles, something in the middle there. And so we are chipping away on our little ramp. They aren't quite yet able to get out and deliver everything for this bridge, but at the same time, we're not done building the segment that we can reach quite yet, so it's not really much of an opportunity cost just yet. So more on that soon, I'm sure. Only other thought I had is I did start researching again. We're grabbing the compactor technology because we finally have excess saplings, and we never got around to doing this, but we have to have overflow logic for saplings too, and we need to be able to shred them. We don't have that recipe until we get the compactor over here. The shredder is what we're actually using. The compactor technology allows you to research the compactor itself and all of these different shredder techs. This is how you get, by the way, recyclables pressed. So if you want to send recyclables over a long distance, or any of these scrap items really, you can squish it down, and then later on, you can bring it back over to the facility. But it's smaller by volume, it's a third, so it's easier to transport. That's the main purpose here. We're going to use it though to just shred our excess saplings. Ramp is done. Here they come. Our little army of amphibious trucks is hitting the water with a full load of concrete each. We are heading over to start building the bridge. So yeah, the fertilizer worked so well. In fact, we have 140% in all three of our farms, a pretty good internal storage buffer, and occasionally we even back up a little bit in this storage buffer. Our loose line is so packed up with leftover excess crops that I had to add at least a second digester. I think that'll be enough, but we are definitely going to appreciate having some extra fuel gas lying around. And we did complete our shredder for the excess of our tree saplings. So this is continuing to stepwise improve, and we are very pleased, I think, with how much better it looks than, say, the beginning of last episode, for sure. We've also got the stacker now, the new Update 4 version, which is so much better than the old one because it moves itself and you don't have to babysit the thing. So rather than the dumping zones, which we had been using, we are now creating a zone in which the stacker tower may dump, rather, and we can adjust that using the height here, the left edge here, the right edge over this way, and you can even decide which slope you want to preview. Each of the different goods that you can dump has a different sort of angle it'll slide around at. And for example, rock is a very tight angle, and dirt is a very loose angle. At any rate, point is, it lines up now using 18 here with the actual edge of where we had previously been dumping, and it will extend itself, which is pretty cool. So whenever, and as you actually can see, it's just now triggered itself, whenever it runs out of stuff it can reach in its current radius, right, which it has here, it will automatically request, because we have allowed it to, this starts by default with a 0 max, it will extend itself out further, and we don't have to delete and rebuild all this stuff to move it further out. It takes care of itself. We can even speed up the delivery if we like, but our truck network will take care of it. And so it slides further forward. It takes all of this stuff and it dumps it. It's really fantastic. It automates this entire process. So we have rock, slag, and waste, the three things we had previously been dumping manually with the dumping designation. We have them all accepted over here. So not requested, but accepted. So anytime a mine is full of it and we are sort of pushing it out with the keep empty slider, this is a legitimate place for it to accept. We've taken everything out of the universal dumping zones. And we want to do that because we don't want to be in conflict, for example, with out here we want to proactively request rock and slag. So when, for example, the slag is pushed out with red from the copper mine, it'll first look to places that request it, our green slider here. But if that's full, as it very often is, then this which accepts it will be the next best place in the truck network to dump it. So yeah, that's the new stacker. I'm pretty excited about this. Even if it requires a little bit of touching up, which maybe it will, let's see. I'm very pleased. This is so much less manual babysitting than the old version. Very cool to have. So using actually some of the same push-pull logic as we just talked about with the slag and rock, I've set up two little bits of storage here so that our amphibious trucks, when they run back and forth, don't have to go all the way out and back to the bridge. So they just have to come here to pick up materials. So I've set, using this neat new Update 4 feature, which trucks are allowed to operate here. So I only want the big trucks helping out and bringing stuff over. I don't want our little guys stressing about this. And similarly, we're not summoning it here, because if we do, then no one will ever be able to use it. And by that, I mean these fellas won't be able to come collect from it and use it to build. But if we can't summon it here, we have to have a push on the other end of the system. So what we've done is we say at our primary production spot, if there's a spot to put this, please blast it out of here. And that is not in conflict with everything else out here. And in fact, because those areas are summoning it, so to speak, this will be the area that you only put it when everything else is satisfied, which is great because this is construction, which is lowest priority in our network. So hopefully this will help us de-bottleneck the amphibious vehicle throughput as a potential thing that's been slowing us down here. But ultimately, it's really just about the raw production of these things. They're quite a bit still, you know. We need several thousand of each, so keep chipping away. Check it out. We've got a bridge. Looks crisp as hell, huh? So trucks can drive back and forth on this side, and in the future, whenever we need it, we've got space to add rails. And now that we've got this built, we'll be able to, I don't know, just sit here and admire it, I guess. We don't really need to be on this island quite yet. But hey, whenever that changes, we'll be ready, I guess. Actually, wait, here it is. We can now come over here to cut down trees, right? And that is super critical because we are running out of loggable trees in this area, right? So that's totally worth the 10,000 steel and concrete that we just spent to enable us to be able to go over there and cut down those trees. It even looks really nice, like off in the distance, right? It's a pretty cool landmark that's going to be, I think, a pretty big part of our base going forward. Very nice. Two little housekeeping items real quick. We have just recently outgrown our current maintenance throughput, so I think it is time to build a second one of these depots. There we go. And similarly, we've outgrown the supply for our settlement water, which is just the 48 coming out of the single groundwater pump right now. And shout out to Rafka for pointing this one out in the Discord. We should probably go ahead and place another groundwater pump here. So let's go ahead and get that all set up as well and make sure that our pipes can connect here. Very good. So let's tackle one last big thing, so to speak, before we wrap up today. And that is the next level of research labs. So as we were last time, we are going to be blocked from the next tier of technologies until we upgrade our research labs, in this case, to Research Lab 2. So, Research Lab 2 also requires lab equipment, but it requires Lab Equipment 2. Lab Equipment 2 requires, well, Lab Equipment 1, as well as some glass, which we already make next door, and I think quite some excess at this point. But we also need to make paper. Paper we have not yet tackled. It's easy enough though. We put it into one of these chemical plant buildings from earlier in the episode, and we mix up some limestone, very small amounts of limestone, and some wood chips with a tiny amount of steam, and that'll make 12 paper. 12 paper, by the way, is enough for 3 of these assemblies making Lab Equipment 2. We only need 2 of them, so this whole recipe is going to run at sort of 2/3 speed, which means we're going to need all of 4 wood chips, 1 limestone, and 1 steam. Very small amounts of all of these things, worth keeping in mind. So I actually have a blueprint for us. You don't have to do this. I think this is a relatively straightforward setup, but I figured I'd try to make it as close to a single click as I possibly could. So this blueprint here, we'll come back to this in a moment, is meant to be overlaid right on top, and it does a few different things. First, maybe most visually obvious, it upgrades the research labs. That's, the whole point of this. But it also adjusts our current setup, which is producing just the Lab Equipment 1, and it adjusts that machine to come over here, rotate, and upgrade so that it makes twice as much. So 24 Lab Equipment then goes into these 2 assemblies, each taking 12 of it, along with some glass, which we'll bring in, and some paper, which we'll make over here. This is the chemical plant, This is the boiler that makes the 1 steam that we need. So this is turbo overkill. This will run at 1/48th speed. It will actually run on the wood chips though. So we're going to bring in some wood, we're going to shred that into wood chips, and the wood chips are going to, every once in a while, run the boiler. This is actually like a pretty nice sustainable source of steam in other settings. Something to keep in mind for maybe a different playthrough. And it will more by volume flow through here into the chemical plant itself and be turned into paper. We do drop off a tiny amount of limestone as well. And one thing to keep in mind, because this is going to run at 1/48th speed, I've just set it up to accept manual drop off of water, which is, it consumes 1 water per minute, right? So this should be pretty handleable by trucks. If you personally prefer, you can of course put a water storage over here with a pipe and have it all set up like that, or to connect it up to any other water main that you may have. The way this is meant to be done, though, is to be placed directly over top here. So I suggest visually lining up the research labs, but the belts in the area directly by my cursor are also a helpful visual guide, I think. And you hold Shift and click. Shift will override the warning that we are moving this building specifically, and we'll let our trucks get to it. We'll build all of this area here, but we don't need any more of the mechanical parts just yet. We'll keep an eye on it. And one last note, this does assume, and I don't even know if I called this out, but when we built the mid-game transit center here, we no longer needed the vehicle parts that we were producing over here. And I believe this does take a little bit of the space that was previously occupied by it. So if you do still have that here, you may want to clean that up first, or adjust it, or adjust this, whatever you prefer. So in a moment, this will adjust and move over, and I'm going to Unity speed that one up specifically because there is just a tiny amount of manual belt work that does need done here. Because this has to move first, it couldn't place the new belt connections. And so all we really need to do is connect here and here. The other thing you'll need to do is flip the direction of the delivery belt here for the research labs themselves. It's still oriented the other direction. And once this all gets up and running, we will need to manually clear this belt as well from all of the remaining lab equipment that was previously here. So this will just take some time here to get everything set up, dropped off, etc. And this will require, of course, some lab equipment to itself. As a result, we want to make sure that our trucks can come grab it from here so that they can take it over and actually use it to do the construction. But really, this should just be a matter of time. So I'll check back in shortly. And a short while later, everything is up and running. We are fully set up to tackle the next set of technologies, which is very exciting. One quick note before I forget, I did end up building the third now in this row of our steel into mechanical parts productions. We're not running at full speed in this second maintenance depot yet, although it's, it's creeping up pretty quick. One of these can support one of these, so we basically should have one dedicated to each. And then this one makes the 24 that is more than sufficient for this one. So this is probably a little early, but I'm just getting out ahead of it because otherwise I'll forget. One last thing to make sure to do once the lab equipment 2 is spinning in, because it requires glass as an input, it will also create glass as a recyclable component on the output. And so make sure to add yet another row here for the broken glass to come out, and we'll just send it right down the street to the factory that accepts it. At any rate, the upgraded labs here will allow us to get into a ton of very good technologies the next few episodes. There are a million directions we can go, and all of them are good. We have the next set of upgrades for the refinery. We have the ability to double our throughput and improve our efficiency for all of our blast furnace factories, better desalination, better pipes, a 50% increase to our power generation for free is what this technology is. Eventually, we'll also be able to clean up some pollution in terms of wastewater, in terms of trash, in terms of exhaust. There's a ton of good stuff in the farming sector, and yeah, the list just goes on and on and on. It's very cool. And by the way, here's the recycling edict I thought we unlocked initially, but whoops, here it is. And we'll definitely zip through all of those as well. They are helpful for us to have. So much good stuff in here. This is really, I think, where the meat and the potatoes of this game really starts to spin up. It's exciting stuff. That's what we're going to call it for today, though. As always, today's blueprints are available on our Discord, although it's just the one for research labs, I guess, right? Maybe the fertilizer setup should be blueprinted. I don't know. This feels like it should be manageable. Just in case, here, pause the video if you want a closer look. But do let me know if this level of build would be helpful to give out. If so, I can tidy it up and share it out later on. I think we're striking the right balance of not overdoing it on those, but do let me know. Happy to come back and put that together if it would be helpful. And actually now, yeah, for the first time, we're going to make the save file available too. Let me know if that's something you're interested in. I'd been intending to release it every so often, and this is the end of episode 5. That felt like a milestone. But it's not so much more effort to release it every episode alongside the blueprints if that's something you would be interested in. So if you'd find that helpful, let me know. I might even be able to go back and find approximate save points at least for previous episodes. Nice work today, though. Advanced Fertilizer, Amphibious Vehicles, our first bridge, new and improved stacker around the corner here somewhere. There we are. More steel throughput, a whole bunch of housekeeping, odds and ends. A lot of good stuff got done today, and I think we're in a pretty good spot after 5 episodes, ready to really hit our mid-game stride here shortly. I'm looking forward to it. I hope you are too. And if you are, be sure to tune in again for the next one. And until then, though, have a great rest of your day, and bye-bye.